eventually going to see this on the internet. I just wanted just to say it.
We can cut this here. We're going to set up now the live Q&A with him. Dennis, can we put some lights on? Okay, just to take us a couple of minutes, I'm going to contact him on the phone, and we'll have a live Q&A with Roy. A household survey. They take anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000 households in the United States, and they randomly pick them across the country, and they interview them about the American life. For example, they'll check how many people in the household, their income level, a lot of how many automobiles they have a refrigerator. And one of the segments, one of the areas that they investigate is about religion. They'll ask them what religion they are, etc. But let me just explain. It's what they do. They physically interview these people for 45 minutes to an hour. They either go to the person's home, or if they can't reach them, they do it with a telephone. So it's about a 45-minute comprehensive interview with hundreds and hundreds of questions. As one of the segments, one of the sections of this University of Chicago survey, as I said, is about religion. So they start asking people about religion, and about half the people claim they're not religious, or do not have a religious affiliation, or especially are not associated with a church. When the person tells them they're associated with a church, they tell the University of Chicago survey what church they are associated with. Now, from those people that they tell him what church is associated with, he then picks those churches and contacts the church. This is the guy from Duke, Mark Chavez. So he does about 1,200 to 1,500 churches, synagogues, and most of these churches around the United States. I just want to make one comment about 1,200. If any of you are a mathematician, there's a magic number in a good survey of 1,200 people. You can go 2,000, 10,000, 100,000. You're not going to change your confidence level much greater than that. For example, when they do surveys about how people are going to vote, etc., they try to do it around 1,200 people because you get a pretty high confidence level. Or it's like 3 sigma if you know anything about mathematics. So he does that. So now he interviews also the church leaders. And what he basically gets from the church leaders, he finds about their congregation sizes, he finds about their budget, etc. So he asks them a couple of questions. One is what's the total budget, and how much do they spend money-wise on the social services? That's how he got the number of 13. $1,500 average, and then he knew what the total budget was, which whatever it was. He divides the $1,300 in the total budget, and about 52%. So that's pretty accurate, and he's very well versed in this. I mean, he's extremely confident. This is a very representative number of what religious organizations, institutions are putting into this area. Roy, do you have any quick questions? I was very, very sad. We had a very lengthy discussion, 2 or 3 hours. I was on the phone with him today, and I was very confident what he's doing. And he said this has been reinforced, and a couple of times he's done this. So I think the number is very, very valid.
I really like Chavez. He, there are a lot of, as we talked about yesterday, there's a lot of flaky research being done in sociology, and Chavez is really, he's not flaky. He really knows how to get the real numbers.
And he's accepted that maybe in the future he'll come speak to us personally, but it may be a little
interesting.
Okay. Okay, now we're open. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Hi, Roy. Can you see me?
Yes, I do.
I'm Jane. I interviewed you on the phone.
Oh, great. Hi, Jane. Hi. You did such a great job with that announcement. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to ask, is it really only 2% that they give, that these Christian charities give? That seems awfully small. I mean, it's insignificant. In other words, the Christian charities are liars.
Can I make one comment? The 2%, I want to make a caveat. The 2% is only the financial, the money. It does not include any time, any space, etc. It's the financial amount. So if they gave free time, things of that type, that's not part of the $1,300.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go through these numbers. One of the things that struck me reading the books on this topic was even when they talk about how generous Christians are, the ones who go to church, the church that makes them so generous, even those people, the amount that people actually contribute to humanitarian causes is not really very amazing. Like, there's this myth about people tithing. People think that there's all these people out there that give 10% of their income to their church, for example. That's extremely rare. Extremely rare. Nobody gives 10% to their church, and even if there's people who end up in these categories of Christians who donate a lot of money to charity, you're talking about something like you're talking about typical donations from a household of say $1,000 a year from a family where the income is $50,000. So these are small amounts of donation. We're not talking about Christians, people who go to church, become people who will literally give you the shirt off their back. No, they're not. We're not talking about that scale of generosity. We're talking about statistical variations, small variations in how much people are likely to donate to nonprofit organizations, and the amounts are actually very modest.
I have one question, one comment. You're assuming that they're giving out of generosity, but they also could be giving out of fear. And how does one actually sort of parcel out their altruistic versus their fear motivation?
Well, thank you for that. That's actually a huge. That issue affects a lot of this data. For example, when people report that they go to church often, I mean, do they go to church because they're religious types of people, or do they go because they are afraid not to go because all their neighbors will hate them if they don't go?
I think there are little old ladies
who report that they put money in the collection plate on a Sunday. Are they putting money in the collection plate because they believe in Jesus, or are they putting money in the collection plate because they'll look bad if they don't? So it's really hard to tell what the influences are on people.
And I think there are cases where people who miss one Sunday at church actually get to go through like some kind of traumatic reaction because they're afraid that missing. That it's the same thing that you're talking about. Is that it's that fear that's ingrained. That I don't know why, if people are going to worship a God, they should at least worship a grown-up, But I've known people who actually miss a Sunday at church, and they're really broken up about it. I mean, they're really upset and traumatized by it. And I think it's part of that same picture.
Yeah. So people are afraid, and in a way, the central feature of religion is fear. That's kind of the main thing about it. That's the primary feature. Not generosity, it's fear.
I just have a general question. Why is our government in the adoption business to start with?
Our government?
Why are they giving all this money to Catholic charities for them to use to help adoptions? So that goes to something tangential, I know.
Yeah.
More of a comment than a question.
I think it's just part of the larger package, really. The adoption's a part of it.
That's a case of the government trying to outsource a program to an organization that they think will be good at handling it. So they think that Catholic charities are good at the adoption thing, and I don't know if they are actually good at that. I mean, they have, you know, yeah.
Steve.
A couple of comments. Well, first of all, I very much enjoyed the interview. As for the hospitals, it seems to me there's a tremendous number of secular hospitals. I see hospitals all the time that don't say anything about St. Francis or Mount Sinai. So I think we can count most of those on our side.
Yeah, we can count most hospitals. You know, some of the biggest, you know, one of the biggest nonprofit organizations in the world is the Mayo Clinic. That's a nonprofit, that's a secular organization. And like I said earlier, yesterday, most hospitals, I mean hospitals in general, do not, you know, they don't provide religious medicine. They aren't really religious organizations. It's misleading to talk about Catholic hospitals because they aren't Catholic in the way they operate. Except when if you're a woman who's dying and they won't give you an abortion even though you're dying, then that's a Catholic behavior. But in general, the so-called Catholic hospitals, they're only called Catholic because they're affiliated with some sort of Catholic, well, basically a corporation, some giant corporation that owns this hospital, and it calls itself Catholic, and so the hospital ends up being called Catholic, but there's no real connection with religion. So in a way, there's no such thing as a Catholic hospital.
Mm-hmm. And as for the religious people acting out of fear, there's also that they're bribed. I mean, the way to control people is to threaten them and to bribe them. And with religion, it doesn't cost you any money. You can promise them everlasting salvation or everlasting damnation, and it doesn't cost you a dime.
Yeah. Yeah, religion is a wonderful product because you can claim absolutely any benefit for it.
In the area of the hospitals, we have a very serious problem, actually across the United States, with the consolidation of many hospitals that's going on. And when they try to consolidate a Catholic hospital with a secular hospital, they always keep their legacy going. And part of the merger is they must not have family planning services in the combined hospital. And a lot of these have become real problems. For example, in New York City, we had the one down in Greenwich Village, was at St. Vincent's, which was known for treating a lot of people with HIV, HIV causing, and they were going bankrupt. So they were trying to merge that hospital with another one, and it so happened it ultimately went out of business, the hospital, because they wanted to make sure that anyone who merged with them would not give family planning services, and so it went out of business. So we're having this all over the country now, where there might be, in some communities, a Catholic hospital and some others, they won't give it up, and they'll have to go out of business otherwise.
Maybe someday there will be a law that says that if you're you can't call yourself a hospital unless you provide, the full range of services. You can't just say, yeah, we'll help you if you're straight but not if you're gay, and things like that. If you say things like that, then you don't get to be a hospital, and you can't be nonprofit. You can't, and you can't get federal funding. Right now, you can do crazy things like that and still get federal funding.
Of course, now in Virginia, they're trying to legalize state rape, where women who are seeking abortions must undergo what they call a trans.
The governor today changed that.
He dialed it back somewhat.
He dialed it back. It'll be external, not an internal.
Oh, it'll be an external rape as opposed to an internal rape. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that makes it better. Go ahead. You can adjust that mic, by the way.
I don't want to break anything. Hi, my name is Mary Ann Webb, and I'm new to New York, and I've been an atheist for some time. I'm also have a science and a mathematical background. I really enjoyed your talk and the preview that we had beforehand, and most of it I agree with. At least I want it to be so true, because anything kind of that goes against the church's good deeds makes me smile.
Right.
So, I had a few points personally that make it seem realistic that the church or religious people are seen as more generous. First of all, I think there's a donation of time and money that has to be factored in. But the church, I'm going to donate. I'm not that generous. I don't wake up and think, oh, I need to donate $50 today. Let me go and find something to donate to. I'm more kind of lazy on that factor, and I wait for somebody to come and ask me for money or some opportunity to arise. And I think if you go to church every day, every week, and then you get mails from your church saying, can we have some money for this product or that project or whatever, just my frequency of donation would increase if my requests for money increased. So I think there's a balance there that could be factored into your discussion. I think also, for me, I do try and donate probably time more than money, and it's really hard to find any affiliation to an organisation that's not religious. Most volunteer short-term projects tend to have some religious nature to them. I tend to avoid the overt ones, but they generally have one, so statistics are going to be skewed there too. A couple of things I kind of question you on, and maybe you can just, if not address it today, at least think about it for future talks. One is, and there seemed to be some confusion as to whether we were talking about religious people and their generosity, or religious organizations and what they actually do with their money. And they seem to be two completely different arguments. The other thing is, mathematically, a median is the middle value in a set of numbers. So if I have 20 numbers, and the first 10 are ones and twos, and the other 10 are several thousands and millions, my median is going to be very small, but my mean average is going to be much more representative. So I was just questioning that 2%. Was it based on the median or the mean and the total?
Chavez refers to that as the median amount given by religious congregations for humanitarian services.
Right. So from my point of view as a mathematician, that would underplay the percentage that you're giving me. So you might be telling me the median amount is 2% of the total money coming in, but it would be maybe 15% of the mean amount kind of thing. So you just have to be really careful about what actual numbers you're using there aren't misrepresenting something unfairly.
There's the...
Larry, can I respond to those questions?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Number one, he did address the volunteer time, ma'am. He did address, Chavez did, and it was very minor. Not only were the dollars low, the volunteer time, if you could dollarize it, whatever you dollar, was very small. So it wasn't thousands and thousands of dollars of volunteer time. It was very. He gave some numbers, so it's not out of proportion for that. I asked him the question about the median and the average, etc. He said it's not too. The spread isn't that far. He said, of course, you got some extreme ones like some large super churches that the numbers may be a little larger. But he said that basically that was a pretty good representation of what it was. So maybe it was $1,200 or $1,300 you threw the average in, because you could get someone who just given zillions of dollars, and that would move the average dramatically out. He felt the median.
But it turns out that the amount is quite small. I think I read in Mark Chavez reported that the median expenditure of a single congregation in the United States on humanitarian programs is about $1,300 per year.
Yes, right.
And so half of the congregations spend less than that, and half of them spend more than that. Some do quite a bit of humanitarian work. Most do very, very little. $1,300 is not very much money over a whole year to spend on humanitarian efforts if you're a congregation. So there's
well, can I just interrupt? There's also the misconception about as far as non-believers and specifically atheists. There's a misconception, I think, generally about atheism, as though there was an argument going on that atheism is an absolutist response to the absolutism of religion, which it is not. And so therefore you get questions on the internet, well, why aren't there any atheist hospitals? As though it's atheism is the lack of belief in God. There isn't that even though it sounds like we're evading moral responsibility, it just so happens that by definition there is no moral responsibility implied to something that you just simply don't believe. You know, it does. It's not symmetrical. In other words, there's not. You know, and in fact, atheists do give to religious charities because you know, they're unaware of. Well, there are secular charities, and I think they should become more and more known.
Yeah.
I mean, I've given to religious charities in the past.
Of most of the religious organizations. So if you had a mega church,
some kind of symmetrical argument,
for example, and they just happened to be doing something, he felt the meeting was a better representation than average in this situation. You know, it's like the expression, the average depth of the river is 3 feet, but you got a spot that's 12 feet, and that could, you know, bring the average wherever, and people would drown. So we know the difference between median and average, but he's just saying that he thought the median was a better representation about the amount what it would be. Okay.
Just to be precise here, what he said was that the median expenditure was around $1,300 per congregation, and that $1,300 corresponds to about 2% of the average budget. So I think putting those two numbers together is pretty. I think that's. I think it's fair, and I think it's representative of. And I don't think there's anything misleading about. You know, the fact that one's the median and the other's an average. I think that's pretty clear.
You said that major.
I wanted to say something about the effect of there's a very interesting biasing effect in this research that you mentioned in your question. When when you study what makes people donate to charity, the research shows that one of the biggest factors in how much people donate is simply how often they're asked. And so there's an effect there where if you're in a church, you're going to be asked more often. And some people know lots of people in church, or they know lots of people in different kinds of organizations, so they get asked more often. So that means that the people in these organizations, you might think that they've become more generous because they're in these organizations, but in fact they're donating more often simply because they're asked more often.
They know a soft touch when they see one. Gloria.
Gloria Kingsley. I just wanted to thank you for all of the statistical information, which I think would be very helpful in talking to my friends who sometimes won't believe this information if we just talk in generalities. However, there's something that I question, and that is, or I wonder if you don't agree, that most of the hospitals that are called Catholic or Jewish or whatever were originally founded by a Catholic organization or a Jewish organization. I mean, Mount Sinai certainly was founded by Jewish people, and the New York Presbyterian, Cornell Weill, those were founded by these religious groups, and therefore I think that's why, in my opinion, that's why they're called by the religious names.
Okay,
and,
that's fair.
I wouldn't want to, just negate the fact that these hospitals are religious completely.
I still think it's a little misleading to refer to them as religious organizations. You have
Well, we don't. Do you know what their bylaws say? I mean, this is very important. What does the New York Hospital Presbyterian say in its bylaws? What does Mount Sinai say? That is where the fact of whether they're religious or non-religious, and now they're all mostly non-partisan anyhow. They treat people of every religion or non-religion. They don't ask you.
They treat everyone the same, so they're not religious hospitals.
Well, what is their foundation? What do the bylaws say?
Their bylaws say we bring in a whole bunch of money and pay a bunch of doctors to help people,
is that
and then we try not to spend all the money so we don't go out of business.
Whatever it is, I'm sure that if I spoke to a Jewish friend and told her that Mount Sinai was not a Jewish hospital, they would be very offended, and I think personally rightly so.
What about it is Jewish?
Because they were founded by Jewish people.
But they're not practicing that ground today.
What about a Catholic hospital with nuns and nurses?
They don't have to practice their religion to say that it was founded by Jewish people. Anyhow, your total overall approach is excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
I agree with it.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm sure you and everyone in the audience is familiar with the recent thing that happened with the Susan G. Komen Foundation and how they pulled money from Planned Parenthood. And then I was reading about it recently, and I saw apparently Planned Parenthood saw a huge spike in donations from individuals as a result of that news story. And forgive me if you already covered this, I didn't see the whole video, but have you seen, as someone that reads about these things a lot, have you seen any other incidents like this where something political happens that people don't agree with and then the general public donate to a secular charity as a result, kind of in rebellion?